My name is Neil Jacobs. I am the co-founder of FOMO21, which is a Bitcoin merch and apparel company. I also do a lot of I see hats out there and t-shirts. Thank you very much. I also do contract work for many conferences, promoting them all across the country. Some of you may know me from Clubhouse a couple of years ago. Those are fun times. And yeah, I'm here in Bitcoin to have a good time. And specifically today, I am here to introduce a man I met a couple years ago in person. It's actually a pretty good story. So a friend of mine in the Bitcoin space who I met through Clubhouse lived in Los Angeles. And she said, hey, I'm thinking about traveling down to Mexico. You want to go for a road trip? I'm like, yeah, sounds like fun. It's August of 2021. We start driving down there. She goes, by the way, there's a Bitcoin conference going on in Ensenada, Mexico. It was called the Bitcoin Standard Conference. It was the first annual Bitcoin Standard Conference, and it was the only ever Bitcoin Standard Conference. So we showed up. We didn't have any tickets. We crashed the conference. We actually crashed the hotel one of the nights of the conference. And sitting at a poker table, and if any of you know Tone, you know there's probably going to be a poker table around, is Tone, Alex Svetsky, Gabe Higgins, a bunch of people in the Bitcoin space, and I see a chair open and I say, hey, could I play? And I didn't know any of them at the time, and Tone was very gracious, and he's like, yeah, come play. We played for a few hours. I took all his money, so it went really well. And then after we were done, and I don't know if Tone remembers this, we kind of sat down at this little table, and he's like, who are you? And we started talking, and since that day, Tone, I consider him a friend. He's a really nice guy, very sincere, someone that's been around a long time, an OG, I guess you would say. He is the owner and co-founder, or owner and founder, not co-founder, of the Financial Summit, Unconfiscatable, former Wall Street trader. He is an expert Bitcoin TA guy, and I'm just pleased to introduce him, Tone Vays.
All right, hey everyone, thank you so much. I believe this is my 5th time here at BitBlock Boom. I only missed the very first one because at that time I was just trying to put together my own conference at the same time, not on the same day, but the same year. And I see 25 minutes on the clock. I am going to jump right into my presentation. I bet a lot of people are familiar with my work. Let's do it this way. How many people actively watch my channel today, and please be honest? Raise your hand. All right. How many people have used to watch my channel like 3-4 years ago? There should be a lot more hands going up. All right. Awesome. Okay, my name is Tone Vays. I'm not going to talk about myself much. Now, I do recommend everyone come and sit as close to the stage as possible. There are Easter eggs in the presentation, and whoever gets the answer will get a prize. The prize is going to be free entry to Unconfiscatable, and I have a secondary prize. I have a hardware wallet. I know you're not supposed to accept hardware wallets from others, but it is a Jade wallet in its original packaging. All right. I'm Tone Vays. Gary, thank you so much for inviting me back to BitBlock Boom. I was on a hiatus because I spoke a few times in a row, and now I'm back to speaking again after not speaking for a few years. So the Easter egg in the presentation is this logo. It's the Unconfiscatable logo. Takes place in Las Vegas. When you see it in the slides, that's one. So you count how many times this logo appears. I'll help you guys with the first one, and then you guys will have to add them up. It's also make sure that people pay attention to the slides. All right. So my presentation today is the bullish case for Bitcoin. Most of my videos are about the price of Bitcoin, and I'm going to stick with that for this presentation. Here's the entire history of the price of Bitcoin up until a few weeks ago. I don't have that last drop. I'm trying to forget that it ever happened. And the most recent one, oh man, the bull market has to start soon. So the presentation is going to be about. And let me get that out of the way there. And when I started this presentation, I started doing this presentation around 2015. It was different. I always alter it, but I always have the price history in the background. So it's awesome to watch the chart just go up and to the right, and eventually it will be further up and further to the right. And so I'm going to go through all of the major, I guess, memorable reasons for me personally that caused the price of Bitcoin to jump up each step of the way, and also some of the reasons that created some of these tops that we had in Bitcoin. So from the very beginning, we're going to go over to Australia, and the very first time Bitcoin was mentioned as a use case was when Satoshi mentioned it as potentially taking donations for WikiLeaks, okay? And that jumped the price to about 10 cents. And by the way, this is your first hint. There it is. There's the logo. It's going to show up a little bit differently all the time. But count how many of these you see as the presentation goes on. It's about 100 slides. And I only have 21 minutes now, so here we go. The next major use case was, of course, Silk Road. Silk Road helped bump the price to a couple of bucks. And then thanks to our very own Chuck Schumer over in New York, he helped bump that price all the way to $30 when he went on TV complaining about Silk Road. In an amazing feat of 60 seconds, he taught people how to anonymously buy their drugs online with Bitcoin using Tor, a feat that has never, ever been conquered, by the way. He managed to do it in 60 seconds. It was absolutely incredible. And this brings us all the way back to 2013. And for me personally, this is what gotten me thinking about Bitcoin. I heard about it from Max Kaiser back in 2011, 2012, watching RT, but that didn't do it. It was the Cyprus banking incident in 2013. How many of you remember that? When the government simply decided to confiscate 50% of everyone's money in their bank account above 100,000 euro. It wasn't exactly 50%, it was 47.5%. They wanted to, be under that 50 mark. And that made me realize that you need to store your money in something that's unconfiscatable. And that's how the whole idea of unconfiscatable came about. I ended up getting the domain, and then eventually did something with it. So, wait, let me get that out of the way. And unconfiscatability is super important. Besides what happened in Cyprus, also in general, the concept of civil asset forfeiture has actually confiscated way more money than criminals and burglars have. It flipped it in 2014. In 2014, the government confiscated $5 billion, and robbers and criminals had only stolen about $4 billion. And that ratio is only going up. It's just hard to get statistics. The latest statistic I have is since 2000, the states have confiscated almost $69 billion that the authors were able to find, the researchers, and that's not even every state publishes this data. So it's a ridiculous amount of money being confiscated, which is why you need to store your wealth in something that's unconfiscatable. It is only unconfiscatable if you protect it properly, which is why the government was able to seize 144,000 Bitcoin when they shut down Silk Road. So these are some of the really big events. And of course, at the very, very tops, we have big crashes of scams. It's as I was doing this presentation, I'm actually discovering it. Wow, you can almost identify the bottom of the price of Bitcoin and the top of the price of Bitcoin based on what is collapsing in the crypto space. And in 2013, it was, of course, the infamous Mt. Gox collapsed right at the top, and exchange goes down. You'll see this theme throughout the presentation. I'm not going to get into the details. Personally, I blame Jeb McCaleb for all of it, not Mark Karpelès. It's a good slide to maybe take a picture of, and you find out how Mark Karpelès bought Mt. Gox with 84,000 missing Bitcoin. And when he confronted Karpelès about it, who sold him Mt. Gox, the answer was, maybe you can just mine it. It's all right there in the emails, and I have no idea how Karpelès ended up in prison and McCaleb's walking around. But that was the top. What about the bottom? Well, for me personally, the biggest, most important thing at the very bottom of the 2015 bear market was the Greek banking crisis, which was absolutely insane. those of you that followed that incident, when the Greek banks shut down, when they first shut down, people were only allowed to withdraw 60 euros per day from the ATM machines, no matter how much money they had. And after a few weeks of that insanity, the government allowed them to withdraw 420 Bitcoin for an entire week, okay? And everyone rushed to the ATM machines and in order to get their 420 euros. And this is a picture from 2015, not much different than that picture from 1907, the biggest financial crash America ever had. It was in 1907. It wasn't 1929. It was 1907. The 1907 crash directly led to the creation of the Fed. Thank you. It was that crash that led to the Fed. Okay, and these are other pictures. The 1930s. The one in the middle there, 1923, where Germans are burning money for gas. Because basically it was a better use case for money. And more recently, 2007, Zimbabwe. And these things don't stop, because here's a more recent one when we go over to Lebanon. It's just the pictures are a little different now when you can't get your money out of a bank. And that's a headline right off of CNN where people went to their banks in Lebanon to literally get their money with a gun. And you'll see that theme throughout everything as well. So that kind of kicked off the bull market in 2016. The halvings helped. We'll get to those in a second because one other one is coming up. But that big wave in 2017, I know there were shitcoins involved, but we're not going to talk about shitcoins. What really, really drove it? And for me, even if you go back to those videos I did in the YouTube channel, it was all about SegWit. Once it was obvious that SegWit is going to get in and that we won the block size war, the price really took off, if you go back to those exact dates. And you can see on this chart where SegWit gets adopted right there, but that blue line, that is the fees. The fees skyrocketed soon after because no one was adopting SegWit. But the Bcash and the other, it was just Bcash at the time, they needed to spam the chain to make us look bad at how SegWit is useless. And it's actually thanks to them. Look at the SegWit adoption that started a few months after the high fees. Everyone was like, okay, I need to, I want to send my Bitcoin. And boom, there's a wave of SegWit adoption. And then SegWit adoption kind of was flattish. And then, boom, you see this huge jump in SegWit adoption from 50% up to 80%? Well, that also followed another huge spike in fees. All right, Bitcoiners, what caused this giant spike to $15, $20, $30 Bitcoin fees in 2021? Not that long ago. Not having. Middle of 2021, March-ish. China, specifically. The mining ban, right? All the miners came off the network, and suddenly it was taking like 20 minutes to get a block. Perfect. Now, again, there was a spike, huge spike in fees earlier this year, and that caused SegWit adoption to go past 90%. What was that spike? Ordinals, all right? So thank you, Roger. Thank you, China. And thank you, Ordinals. Now SegWit is at over 95%. On the blocks, and everyone's enjoying cheap fees again. Okay, now we get to the top. So just like a bunch of scams, always tend to blow up at the top. I actually thought about this. I was doing this presentation like 2 days ago, and I'm like, why is everything always blowing up at the top or bottom? And if I have time, I'll give you my theory. So at the very top of the last bull market, in January 2018, the market top came in December, and here comes BitConnect. Man, I was like remembering everything about BitConnect. That was insane when that thing blew up. That token was worth like $400-something. They were offering like 1% a day returns they were promising them. And people actually believed it. It was completely crazy. And 4 years later, the government finally is doing something about it. Good job. And we actually think they're going to take down Bitcoin. So here's an awesome slide. This is every shitcoin and the highest peak it ever got to. Who remembers Aurora coin? A couple of laughs. So all of the coins and how high they got on coin market cap and where they are today. And BitConnect actually made it to number 6. It was the number 6 coin by market cap. And many of these things no longer exist. A lot of them are down 100%, 98%. Bitcoin is still down 60% right now, or sorry, about 60% right now. When Bitcoin goes back up in the green, everything else is still going to be in the red. It's going to be awesome. That pretty much marked the top. But then there was a secondary top. There was another top in 2019 where Bitcoin just went up to 19,000 real quick. And once again, another Ponzi scam is blowing up right at the top, helps drive the market up, and then it helped drive the market down. This was, of course, the Plus token, which didn't get a lot of attention in the US, but it was huge in China. It was $3 billion, and it was all about Bitcoin. They were actually using Bitcoin, you know, unlike FTX, who never apparently held a single Bitcoin. But in this case, they really were using Bitcoin. And as it was collapsing, people were making excuses. And great comment over here, if I can read it. Now that Bitcoin's collapsing, while it should be going parabolic with the world financial and civil turmoil, do you understand your money is gone? They are dumping your stolen coins at a rate of $1 million every few minutes on Binance and causing the collapse of the crypto market. You people are just too stupid to realize how stupid you are to think crypto can pay interest. And of course, this is around the time when Celsius launched. But that was a great comment from earlier than that. And then another thing that marks like the very end of markets tends to be blow-ups of hedge funds. Unfortunately for one of these, it was friends of mine, but over at Adaptive. But that crash, the COVID crash, was really, really painful, and hedge funds tend to crash. And after the next top and bottom, I'm going to give you my theory as to why things tend to do that at the very end. So great for us Bitcoiners. After that 2020 crash, we went up really, really quickly. And some of that has to do with all the money printing the Fed did. People don't realize 25% of all US dollars were printed in 1 year in 2020. 2020 alone printed 25%. It's like Ethereum printing 70% of all Ethereum on day one, right? US government printed 25% of all dollars in 2021. Absolutely awesome. That helped us a lot. The Fed still has all these charts for us. We can always look for. Now, to me, one of the biggest drivers of the 2021 bull market, and I didn't even realize it till later, was, of course, GBTC. The amount of Bitcoin GBTC, Grayscale, and Barry Silver were purchasing, they were purchasing twice the average daily mined volume of Bitcoin and locking it up in the trust. Okay? Imagine for an entire year, twice the average mined Bitcoin, one person was buying all that Bitcoin. And that was going into the trust. Okay? Now everyone's upset that the value of the tokens is way below the par value. But if it was a normal ETF, keep this in mind. Free market has a way of balancing out. If that was a normal ETF and the price of Bitcoin is going down, the ETF is selling the Bitcoin, driving the price of Bitcoin lower, right? GBTC doesn't sell the Bitcoin. It's still locked up there, right? Those are some of us GBTC holders for retirement purchases are more in the red on that position, but at least the Bitcoin wasn't sold. So the bear market in Bitcoin could have been a little bit worse. So that's good news. And another big element of 2021 was companies started to purchase Bitcoin. Of course, it was kicked off with MicroStrategies and then Tesla. Tesla bought 48,000 Bitcoin. Clearly, they didn't have any strong hands. They already dumped 75% of that. Square is still holding on to theirs. And MicroStrategy still at the top. They bought more. They went from like 90,000 Bitcoin when I made this slide the first time. Now they're at 152. Can we please stop letting Michael Saylor buy all the Bitcoin? You know, if the price is higher, it'll be harder for him to buy it. So, all right, and also helping to drive the market was, of course, the adoption of Bitcoin in El Salvador was absolutely awesome. The bear market's not helping. They're so far the first country, but there's going to be more. United States still has a bunch. I'm not sure about that Ukraine number, but they're not holding Bitcoin for the right reasons. You know, they're holding them because they stole them from people. El Salvador confiscated them from people. Better coin securities needed. But El Salvador got it properly. Okay, and wow, I only have 6 minutes left. I have to speed it up. And of course, when you start Googling, I Googled in 2021, and how many other countries are thinking about it? And there's definitely a few countries that are probably going to get on board once the price goes up. Now, let's talk about a few more factors that are really, really critical for Bitcoin's history. Of course, we all know about Canada and why Bitcoin is so important. And this, I'm going to go through these slides a little bit faster now. And these are my use cases for Bitcoin and what's going to drive the price significantly higher. The confiscation of wealth, again, unconfiscatability. When the Russia-Ukraine situation broke out, wealth was confiscated, but guess what? They couldn't confiscate the Bitcoin if you held it properly. And now countries are getting kicked off the global financial system. And that's another reason why eventually countries will have to adopt it. And here we are, the bottom of the bear market. Right near the bottom, Celsius implodes. And a few months later, of course, FTX implodes as well. And this was the last big one. And I'm still waiting on Binance. But that is likely to be the big one. And more recently, once again, the banking stuff. Nigel Farage loses his bank account. You guys are all familiar with that. Okay, so in my last 5 minutes, we're going to go into the future. What do I see going forward? Well, the best time to buy Bitcoin from the halving cycle perspective has slightly passed, but you're still very, very close to it. So these are all 4 halving cycles, and they line up pretty damn well as to where a good 6-month period is to really catch the bottom of the price of Bitcoin. And slightly zoomed in to get rid of that very first one. The very first halving cycle, those first 4 years, are a little bit tricky. This graph is a little bit cleaner now. So I do believe the 15,000 number is here to stay. And I don't think there is a lot of downside left for Bitcoin, and we are in the up trajectory. But keep in mind, there's always some kind of drop right before the halving, so just keep that in mind. Now, here's one of my favorite metrics. The number of wallets with 1 full Bitcoin in them. This is the middle class. People are able to save up $20,000, $30,000. And this is the Bitcoin that they're holding for the long term. Wallets with 1 Bitcoin. This number is still going up. And if you can afford 1 Bitcoin, you can probably save and afford 2 Bitcoin at current prices. Okay? So this is an incredible metric that takes Bitcoin off the market. Another favorite metric of mine is lightning capacity, but it's gone down. This is probably what just contributed to the a bit of a price drop. Bitcoin, it's off the market. Like, this is not the Bitcoin that's going to get sold. Once in a Lightning network, it stays in a Lightning network. And Liquid. I'm a big fan of Liquid. I don't know why few people are, but same thing. The capacity inside Liquid, once you lock it in Liquid, it's unlikely you're going to be moving it out, but clearly people did, just like with the Lightning Network. Same thing with Liquid. The Federal Reserve, they have these amazing blogs. Oh my God, I wish I can go into it further, but they wrote these articles in like, this one is 2019, A Lesson in Measuring Federal Debt. And then they wrote another one, The Cost of Paying That Debt. But the charts that they have, they update in real time forever, right? So when they wrote them, it wasn't that bad like 5 years ago, and now these charts are going out of control. That was great. So speaking of debt, the problem with debt is when you borrow money constantly and never pay back the principal, your interest has to get rolled over. And the Fed is raising rates like crazy, and that's going to be a downfall. So this is a picture of U.S. debt right now. and this is their projection into the future, and this picture is super wrong. It's going to look more like this, because they did not realize how quickly the Fed is going to raise the rate, and it's going to get out of control. So don't have time to get into these much, unfortunately, but last year's deficit was 1.3 billion, and net interest was 475. With 3 months to go in the fiscal year, we're already above that. This year, we're already on pace versus last year. And the biggest drop-off is actually in income tax revenue. And the amount of net interest is the only line item of government spending that actually goes up exponentially. I am coming to an end. With the high increase in rates, the Federal Reserve is also starting to blow up a bunch of local banks. You see them there, but now they're being downgraded, along with the US itself just recently getting downgraded. Only 4 banks have collapsed so far this year, but that number will likely go up over the next 16 months or so. And the banks are still in trouble, and they really need that excess liquidity that was recently provided to them. Oh, crap. I got to go through this in 1 minute. That's fine. What about the macro factors? Those are the US factors. My biggest macro factor is the collapse of the European common currency. That's still my biggest factor for driving people into Bitcoin, when each country in Europe will eventually go back to their own currency. Now, I could be wrong on this. I always thought that each country would look out for their own interest, but over the last 7 years, I'm watching Europe just become this one big Marxist Soviet Union state. So maybe they're not going to break up, and if they don't break up, then they're going to go towards communism completely. So I still hope that they go for their own sovereignty. Hyperinflation and general inflation. So I got this list from a book. Sorry, went the wrong way. I got this list from a book, but the book was written in 2007. So I had to go look for all of these. This is all the hyperinflation that's taken place since 2007. It's insane. And only keeps on coming. Here's our inflation numbers. My next factor, I'm going to be over by 2 minutes, guys. My next factor is the elimination of cash. They call it CBDCs. I call it the elimination of cash. 3 main reasons why governments want to do it. To eliminate cash. Oh, they gave me a few more minutes. To eliminate cash. One is they can set any monetary policy they like. So I actually know Nouriel Roubini. I kind of like Nouriel Roubini. He understands the financial system incredibly well. He stands up there, he'll talk for 30 minutes explaining all the problems with the financial system. And then he says the following: and to solve the problem, we need a negative 12% interest rate in the bank account to force people to spend money. And I'm like, wow, that is the most batshit crazy solution I ever heard. But please do that. Everyone's going to put their money in Bitcoin. Okay? So incredible at identifying problems, not the best at problem solving. And so they can set any monetary policy they like. They can set a negative interest rate. You know those pictures from earlier where people are lining up to an ATM machine? How are you going to do that if there's no cash? There is no ATM machine, right? Those pictures go right into the history books. Next reason is, oh yeah, no, obviously you can't have a bank panic. And they all think we're cheating on our taxes, right? And if only cash didn't exist, they would solve the problem. India, a little more so. Their economy is all cash-based. They estimate 40% of tax revenue that doesn't exist. And some countries are a lot closer to eliminating cash than others. I'm not going to get into the details. So here are the specifics. France no longer allows you to buy anything for 1,000 euros worth of cash. Can't do it, okay? I knew about this. This was a slide in my presentation from like 6 years ago, but now apparently they're actually enforcing it. Germany decided to eliminate their collector markets. If you're buying a painting, ancient coins, prized wine, you got a KYC. Completely insane. United States, they're trying to tax you for unrealized capital gains. Again, all reasons to own Bitcoin, and they want to go after you for a $600 transaction. This one's my favorite. This law came into Louisiana about 9 years ago. Good luck finding it. They're hiding it. You can't sell secondhand property for cash. If you're having a garage sale and you want to sell a bicycle for 20 bucks, legally you're breaking the law in Louisiana. So they really want to eliminate cash. And of course, what does Russian removal from SWIFT mean for the future of global commerce? Well, here's an article from 2019. China, Russia, and India push forward on SWIFT alternative. They were ready for this. They knew it was coming. More recently, they're announcing a gold-backed BRICS currency. I think that's going to be a lot harder than they think it will be. But I don't fault them for trying. And the big news just broke yesterday, literally. BRICS is going to add 6 more countries. And they're going to expand from there. So that's a really powerful economic union to keep an eye on. That's going to, and once the dollar does eventually drop, again, great for Bitcoin. Members of Congress are almost the least trusted entity. They're in between car salesmen and telemarketers. Isn't that incredible? It's the latest Gallup poll. Journalists have slid down. Doctors, I'm not sure why they're that high at this point, but hey. But the funniest thing is, look at them by political party. Look at the differences. High school teachers, confidence from the Democrats, confidence from the Republicans. Next one, journalists, confidence from the Democrats, confidence from the Republicans. And police officers, confidence from the Democrats, confidence from the Republicans, right? So you can see it right there, right? Like with the statistics. 70% of Republicans don't believe the election was fair. I'm one of those. Well, the election was fair part. The Republican part is a little bit trickier. And my last slide, which I think is the ultimate potential situation, is the breakup of the United States into multiple countries. Could be good, could be bad. Depends on how it works. I don't know where I got this slide. This was like 3 years ago I got this screenshot. I think this is a little much, that 89% of the people on this website said yes, but the reason of the no was hilarious. We should become communist. Russia was communist and even bigger than the US, but they stayed together. We should learn from Russia's example and end the oppressiveness of capitalism. Communism is the answer, not splitting up the country. Also, if America become communist, life would be great. Instead of capitalist pigs, communisms care about the equality of the people. So, like, literally, this was the top comment of why America should not split up. Okay? It's, I thought this was hilarious. I had to add it into the slide. And that is it. Those were basically a bit of history on Bitcoin and the main catalysts that are really going to drive Bitcoin to the next level. Once again, I'm Tom Vase. Thank you so much for listening to the presentation. Hope you all enjoyed it. And, so how many of those Easter egg logos did you guys find? They look, all right. Who yelled out 21 first? Good job. I really tried to hide them. That was impressive. Maybe people just guessed 21 because we're on that number. All right, come see me. I will. You'll get a free entry to Unconfiscatable. And one more from the presentation. What was the percentage of wealth confiscated from the Cyprus Bank? Someone's gonna get a jade. Good job, guys. Thank you.